Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Monday Smash right here on Warchant TV. He's Matt Lasser, reporter, warchant.com. I say reporter because he reports on everything. I don't want to specify recruiting for the team, but he does a little bit of everything. My name is Tom Lang. Tonight, Irish O'Fell not available, but you're going to hear from him shortly here on Warchant TV. I'll explain more about that later. You're watching the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. More on Russ also in a moment. Hit the like button as you enter in tonight. Because National Signing Day is right around the corner, we've got a recruiting-centric program, but it's not exclusively about recruiting tonight on the Monday Smash. Matt Lasser is leading off for us tonight. We're going to have Irish O'Fell's interview with Jeff Cameron from earlier today on the JCS play. For those of you who missed that, with good audio, if you watch it on Warchant TV, the audio I tweaked from the radio side, so you get a better sense of what was said between Jeff and Ira. Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst for Warchant.com, going to join us to anchor the show tonight. So we will talk a little bit of team, but we're going to touch on it indirectly because recruiting is going to be the focus, Matt. And I start with the dumpster fire that was the game in Gainesville against the Florida Gators. Did that impact, in your estimation, any of the 27 recruits that Florida State is counting on signing on Wednesday at the beginning of the early signing period? What do you think?
No, not really, to kind of just be straight up with it. It's something that I've noticed this cycle. It's been a lot different, and it's going to kind of show as these new coaches get hired. 4 the other day, and now Kentucky's on the list and all that kind of stuff. As these coaches get hired, you're going to see that how transactional recruiting really is these days, just by how many kids stick around by the school regardless of the coach, right? Florida, when they hired Summerall a couple of days ago, yesterday, you saw a lot of players being like, all right, like excited, now let's go to work, coach, because they probably already have an NIL deal they like from Florida and they don't want to lose it, right? It's not that it's, I think at this point, and I will probably get to this as we talk more about recruiting through the show, is that it's probably going to be a pretty boring signing day overall, just because I think a lot of deals are already in place and it's just not a lot of moving around as much.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was interested in with all of the openings in the Southeast specifically, that you didn't see a ton of decommits. I mean, there were some, and some kids are following coaches to their new destination. I know James Franklin's flipped a couple from Penn State to go where he's going. I saw that Silverfield flipped a guy today to Arkansas. And so there might be a couple of those type deals, but yeah, you're right. It's a brand new world with rev share and rev share contracts and universities and administrations and front offices promising kids money, because once that money's promised, Matt, I know that NIL can go above what the rev share says, but the bulk of the spending is coming from the university side. It's almost like once there's a commitment there that the money is locked in, and so it freezes up the market a little bit. Is that what's happening here? And to Wes's question, you kind of answered this already, but do you expect any surprise flips or just status quo with the class? For example, Auburn now has a new coach and Florida has a new coach. Obviously, LSU does. Is there a kid that maybe was in on one of those schools and was a finalist with them and Florida State that you're worried about maybe, just maybe, now that the coach is in place in Gainesville and Auburn and Baton Rouge, that Florida State could be at risk to lose?
Yeah, again, as of now, no. LSU would be the one you look at just because. So, I mean, think about it like this, right? The USF coach isn't recruiting a lot of these kids. He's maybe early, but now that he's at Auburn, he now has the resources to get them. Before he didn't. He couldn't swing close to any of these guys. Now maybe he can, but again, all these deals are already in place. That for him, it's more about retaining the class he has there already. Yeah. Now, for a guy like Lane Kiffin, who's a major coach going from one major school to another, that's where you're going to look at him taking kids just because he had relationships. They did have resources that they could swing at. John Summerall, Tulane wasn't recruiting any of these kids. So he probably didn't have much of a relationship with them when it came to the process. So again, yeah, as of now, no. And even taking from Florida, as of now, no. The ones you were looking at, that ship has kind of sailed at this point. Maybe Hezzy Kent is one you look at from going from Florida to Florida State just because he's visited a lot. But I'm not sure how feasible it is for them to take 3 tight ends. If there were to be a surprise of good news for Florida State, right now, don't expect much bad news. I think a lot of the bad news was taken away, or what could have happened was taken away just by retaining Mike Norvell. And, there's not going to be much else going on. There's Hezzy Kent. That's probably the only guy that's really up in the air just because he's visited Florida State, and there has been some real traction there when you look at signing day, if anything could happen in favor of Florida State. But other than that, man, it's really nothing. Like Cameron Wilson was the other one you were looking at. he obviously, I mean, Tom, we were in group chats about this. We were all ready for it to go, for him to commit. We had heard behind the scenes that he was flipped, and then it all went reverse and hit the Uno reverse or redo button. So it was just it's been a weird last few weeks with like nothing to put out for recruiting with signing day coming up in the coming days.
Yeah, so we're expecting signatures. One thing that did happen today, and signatures from the 27 that are committed to Florida State as of now. Florida State holds the number 14 class in the country, in large part because of the quantity. But hey, still, last year they were in the 50s at this point, so it is a little bit better. Mike Norvell did move his press conference. The signing day press conference customarily is on the first day of signing day, or the period. For as long as I can remember it, after it moved to December, Mike would speak on Wednesdays. So now, even though listen to me, the signing day window opens up on Wednesday, he's not going to speak to the press until Friday at noon. So I know you've already answered the question. Could it be, though, Matt, that some of the signing times for these players, the early signing period, just as a refresher, everybody, is Wednesday to Friday. So it runs for 3 days, but usually the traffic, if you have commits, 90+% of those kids all make their decisions on Wednesday, and then everything is done. If Mike Norvell's moved his presser, Matt, from a recruiting analyst standpoint, from Wednesday, where it normally is, all the way to Friday, does that mean that Florida State might have a couple of kids sign not on the first day of the signing period, and we might have to wait till Thursday, Friday for a couple of kids?
Yeah, so there is one. Me and Michael are starting to compile times now, and we'll get those on the board probably either Wednesday morning or Tuesday night of when these kids are actually signing. There is one that's expected to sign on Thursday right now. It's defensive lineman Franklin Whitley, who will sign Thursday at 12:15. But other than that, that's still coming in as morning or early afternoon on Wednesday. So let's think back to last year, right, when it was the signing day the signing day press conference was on Wednesday. Usman Kroma hadn't been finalized yet. He had said he was flipping and said he was signing with Florida State, but Mike couldn't talk about him. I think what this does, moving it to Friday, is it just guarantees you can talk about everybody without having to worry about anything. Like Mike Norvell didn't get the chance to talk about Usman Kroma until the booster tour started in Orlando. And that's why it was one of my top priorities to ask him about that when it got to that point, just because it was the first time he could. And then you had guys like Tylon Lee sign on Friday and flip. So I think it just makes sure that you could talk about all the kids at the press conference. I wouldn't read too much into it. It's just I actually like it. I think it's better because then we're not really worried, or we're not getting this sheet of paper at the press conference that you get with all the kids on it. And then you're like, oh, why isn't that name on there yet? Like, he announced that he is signed. And so I think it actually makes less worries when you get down to it.
So what you can expect from us at warchant.com, Warchant TV. Wednesday, we're going to have a full gamut of content, be it on the website and then also here on the channel. The top signees that Florida State lands, we're going to have impact videos available to you here on Warchant TV. And then, as of this moment, unless something changes with Florida State's plans or top signees plans, we've got a live show for 7 o'clock, tentatively. Stay with us on the exact time. But Wednesday night, we will be going live here on Warchant TV to sum up all that has happened for Florida State and the early signing day. So again, subscribe to this channel. It's absolutely free. Hit the bell if you want to be notified when we set the time for that live show on Wednesday night. I do want to get your thoughts on this. So Chip wrote in the chat, please listen to this guy. He's talking about you, Matt. Head coach doesn't matter that much anymore. You got to pay the kids. If you want the top roster, you got to spend the money. These kids care about money, not the logo, not the coach. As a recruiting analyst who's seen these things transition the last couple of years, how much do you buy that statement? Does there need to be anything tweaked about that statement that the Chip has here?
Yeah, I honestly, and this has been something I've really only been thinking about the last few days when these new head coaches have been getting hired, or the last few weeks when this coaching carousel went crazy, is that it's been kind of interesting that it hasn't as much. And everyone's been saying that, but this is what's going to prove it, right? Is that when a new head coach comes in. I mean, think about it. So the Cowboys just got a new coach, and CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott didn't leave because they have contracts. It's that simple. If we're going more towards a pro model where this ties back into team, where they're looking at getting a real NFL-style GM, then it's going to be more like that's where the coach doesn't really matter, and you're signing a place because that's where you get top dollar. And that's yes, when it comes to high school recruiting, it's still going to be a big part of relationships, and that's going to get you your foot in the door. It could get you a discount. And that still happens in places like the NFL, right? People give hometown discounts, or if they have a relationship with a coach from the past and he had coached them before and they want to go back to him, or like think Devontae Adams going to play with Aaron Rodgers again. Like, yeah, that can still happen, and they could still get discounts from that. But if we're going more towards an NFL model, then yeah, the head coach is going to matter less and less as we get down to it.
Brandon puts in the chat here, I hope we get some offensive line, defensive line guys, both recruits and portal. We need a solid foundation to help both sides of the ball. You can't build a house if you don't have a strong foundation. So, what about that, Matt, in terms of how about just the prep class? How would you assess Florida State defensive line, assess Florida State offensive line, how they've done this year?
Defensive line's kind of gone up and down, but I think it's weird with a 3-3-5 to where we shouldn't look at the stars much when it comes to a 3-3-5 when it comes to recruiting, just because it's more about the type of guys on that defensive line to work in this kind of defense, right? You need a guy who can truly play that nose tackle. You need a guy who can truly play a jack position, which I also think Tony White was missing this year, of the guys that didn't exactly fit into his defense that he wants. So I think we need to be aware of that. Like some of these edge rushers coming in may be better because let's face it, this year, Omar Graham wasn't expected to be a jack guy, right? He hasn't played that off the edge pass rusher spot under Adam Fuller in the past, right? It's been like he has played that in high school, and that's what they pitched as his natural position, but he hasn't done that in a few years. Having a guy who can come in and just do that, and that's what he's good at, and that's what you know he's going to be good at, is probably a lot better, or like can fit into that role. So that's what I think. The defensive line is actually fairly good. Ernest Rankins is like your crown jewel of that, and that's someone a lot of people wanted, and Auburn was a shoe-in, and you were able to win that one out, and he hasn't visited anywhere else or had any drama there, so it's nothing to worry about. Offensive line, little bit more worried there, just because they had a decommitment in Deron Parks recently, trending towards North Carolina. I don't know if that's officially happened yet, but they only have like 3 offensive linemen in the class right now. They had a JUCO kid visit yesterday for a quick official visit. But the interesting part about that is they didn't offer him. So I don't know how much to think about a kid they brought on an official visit they didn't offer. I put on the board that look, I'm not going to waste my time and try to get info on a kid when he doesn't have an offer yet. If he gets an offer, then I'll worry about it. But as of now, why would I put time into that?
Did he do a photo shoot? Did I see that right?
Yes, he did. It's the most confusing thing I've seen.
So he did a photo shoot. He's wearing the N7s. He's wearing the Heritage uniforms, and he says it feels good to be home, something like that.
Or where's home? He's committed to the mighty Arkansas State.
Okay, there we go. Where's home? But he didn't have an. Okay, all right. Confusing. Again, that's coming up on Wednesday here. National Signing Day, the early signing period, which has essentially replaced National Signing Day for everybody in college football. I'm curious, since you don't think there's going to be fireworks, and fireworks typically for Florida State on signing day doesn't mean good things, what kid, though, do you think is most critical that you might have a little exhale once the signature comes through and Florida State announces via social media? Because they're going to continue to do that at Florida State to confirm that signatures are here and the kids are locked in. Is there one, is it based on star ratings, or is there somebody within this class that's buried in there that you think they really need to land this guy?
I think the first one you look at in terms of that is Karan Maycock. I mean, that was the guy that kind of flirting around the most there at the end. He took the official visit to Texas. But then as you saw the dominoes go, Texas just had another linebacker commit. So that kind of filled the spot, and that was it. That ship had sailed, and I checked with our on-3 guys at Texas on that too. So that one's looking good. The other one I look at in terms of that is Jason Lopez, the dual sport basketball and football recruit that, he was one that, Nick could tell, producer Nick down there in the green room could tell you, even he thought Miami was probably going to come in and take this one eventually. He had RPM picks in for Miami from other guys on all 3 networks when he committed to Florida State. And those guys even held put at the time on those, saying, yeah, I think down the road, Miami's still going to flip this guy. So this is one that's been good to see that there hasn't been a lot of flirting around. There hasn't been a lot of other visits. It's only been Florida State, and it's been locked down since the commitment. He's talked to some guys. He's been pretty open about saying he's talked to NC State, West Virginia, Miami, but it just never really materialized there after his Florida State commitment. And then the obvious one is Isaiah Williams, just with how many times he has flipped. Since he did flip for Florida State for the final time, it was fine. It like nothing, like there was no worries. It was like we're told from multiple people around the recruitment that like, yeah, this is it. Nothing else is happening. Like this is going to stay this way. But it's just when a kid's flipped so many times, it's a believe it when you see it factor as well. So it's good that he's that I expect no issues with come Wednesday.
And then Chauncey Kennan has been consistent as can be. I think he said something to the effect of a month or two ago, like, it doesn't matter who the coach is. I love Florida State. It seems like Florida State.
He's also got a tattoo, so I think that helps.
He's got the Derwin James level commitment to Florida State in that regard. So he's of no concern in terms of drama on Wednesday. What kind of players Florida State getting there? And I'll ask you about one more before we pivot to basketball. But talk to me about Kennan.
Yeah, a really good DB. Like this is one. He really. I know he just got bumped down, but it really is a 5-star talent. This is your crown jewel of the class. You could argue that Jay Timmons was better. People will say that now that he's ranked higher, but they're really on that same level of elite corner. Florida State has still had a lot of success when it comes to defensive backs so far in recruiting. Pat Surtain's a big part of that. And also on the field, right? Like Jabril Rawls' development has been really good. That's all Pat Surtain. So, DBs have still been their bread and butter and calling themselves DBU. And this kid, his sister, something that we his sister goes to Florida State and runs track at Florida State. That was something that was kind of not hidden through the process, but something that wasn't really emphasized until pretty late on in the summer, right before he committed, was that like, yeah, that was a big deal in it. And I think he grew up a Florida State fan as well. So it was just something that, and I know people don't like to hear that they grew up Florida State fans. It always seems to bite them in the ass, but it just like, it was just, this guy's always been garnet and gold no matter what. And there's no signs of changing that.
So out of curiosity, as we take a look at some of Chauncey's highlights here, I'm going to pivot to Jaden O'Neal. You love that area of the country, Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida State obviously landed the kid a while back. It was in the summer. I think it was near July 4th, maybe a little bit before July 4th. Tell me about what Florida State's getting in its quarterback, because that was a ballyhooed time about Florida State's going to have to play musical chairs, so they get left out here. They were in on the Houston kid, the 5-star, for like a few seconds. Tell me about Jaden O'Neal and what Florida State's getting out of their quarterback.
The biggest thing is he's probably their best pure passer recruit they've had in a while, right? A guy that's not known for, like, you see these guys can run around and stuff like that. Like Kevin Sperry can run around, but Jaden O'Neal is probably your best pure passer. He actually had a pretty good year in Oklahoma at his high school so far this year. I don't have the stats. I can look him up real quick because I think someone sent them to me. But he's been like, that's a really good kid too, by the way. The family's awesome. In general, I think you're getting something really good in Jaden O'Neal, who could kind of be a sleeper for you, right? I mean, it's a 3-star. You're not expecting him to come in. I mean, he's probably got a talent of a 4-star, but you're not expecting him to come in and start right away. Like, that's not what he's going to go. And he could surprise you with his arm, but he can run too. People don't talk about how much he can run because his arm kind of not masks that, but if you have a good arm as a quarterback, you don't need to run. So it's just, I really like Jaden O'Neal. I've liked him since the start. From when the quarterback dominoes started falling, I kept preaching the Jaden O'Neal the whole time.
So Brandon has another question, and this is related to what we just talked about earlier, which is RevShare has kind of kept kids in place. But since Florida State isn't exactly locked in with its assistants or coordinators, since there's been no announcement on if FSU will retain Gus or Tony, how will this affect recruiting? I would hope that both of these guys are telling the recruits something. I'm going to expand that out, Matt, to position coaches as well, because clearly there are going to be some changes on the coaching staff. I don't know if it's going to be the coordinator level. It feels like it might be on the offensive side because Gus wasn't willing to commit beyond the Florida game when asked.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, he said, I'm just focused on making us bowl eligible. I'm like, well, you're under contract for the next 2 years, guy. So, one would think you'd be psyched for 2026. So talk to me about assistant coaches, coordinators. That probably, if head coaches aren't making kids move, that probably isn't affecting. But what do you think from a recruiting standpoint?
Yeah, and this goes to how this is going to go with the coaching carousel with kids signing day being this early. The answer is the kids can still get out of their – it's not called a letter of intent anymore, whatever it's called. They can still get out of that after the fact. We're probably going to see that more this cycle or an early portal entry right after, for if those relationships are actually that strong for the reason for the recruitments. But yeah, in general, assistant coaches, maybe end up moving the needle for one or two kids in the class, probably one. Like last year, you saw it with just Alex Atkins, was just Solomon. Like no one else it really affected. Even the offensive linemen retaining them, they all stayed. Like no one really left. That was important. So yeah, I don't really see much of an effect on it. There will be a one or two that say that's the reason why, and it could cause something, but in general, they're going to be here.
Our Michael Langston will be joining us in about 12 to 15 minutes time. I see him in the green room. We do have the interview with Jeff and Ira that we will be playing here in just a moment. I want to pivot to basketball before we do that because, Matt, you covered team stuff as well, and you were at practice today. Is that accurate for Florida State?
I caught the last 20 minutes, yeah.
Fair enough. I want to know what that felt like and sounded like for those 20 minutes because obviously it was a disappointing performance down in Tampa. You were there covering that game. Luke Laux was none too pleased. It looked like Florida State wasn't ready to play at the jump, and he said as much afterwards. I got to imagine that he has their full attention ahead of a 9 o'clock tip against Georgia tomorrow night. What did you see, and what do you think about where Florida State stands ahead of that game?
Yeah, shooting was definitely emphasized. They did the normal drills they always do, and then free throws afterwards to leave before you leave practice. But you could feel it was more emphasized. Like at one point, they're doing their normal shooting competition between two teams on both sides, and at one time, Luke stopped it and said, "Like guys, we need to make shots. Like it's a lot more fun when we actually make shots. Like that, we all want to score points, we all want to have fun." So that's kind of what happened, and you could tell that it's starting to get a little frustrating that they've had these cold nights. A couple times in a row now. Kobe McGee, I think Kobe McGee is about to go on a run. He just scored 21 points in the loss to Texas A&M. But it feels in his press conference afterwards. Luke said he finally stopped thinking. And to me, I bet you do this too, Tom. I go to golf where it's like one day I am striping it and I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's happening, and I'm playing the best I've ever played. And then 2 hours later, I can't get the ball off the tee. I can't get the ball off the ground. So, and you don't know what happened. You're just overthinking. You're doing something. And you could see that when Luke, during the shooting drill, said, "Come on, guys, game speed it up. Like, let's take this seriously. We need to make shots." You could see Kobe kind of stop thinking, and it was just flowing when it was going game speed and not talking or doing anything else. And that happened to a lot of guys during that drill, too, that you kind of saw a switch flip a little bit. I'm pointing out Kobe because that's what I noticed the most. But yeah, I think it's going to be better.
He's a noticeable player. He's got whatever that it factor. I remember feeling the same way, maybe not on the same level because there's a little bit of hope in my heart. But the first time I saw Devin Vassell, these were garbage time minutes in the second half. I'm like, ooh, he understands the spacing, and he has the touch, and he has the knack to knife his body into those tough areas. I'm going to ask you about leadership on the team in just a second, but tonight's program, as always, is brought to you by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. As a two-time customer, I've now bundled with State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. I am proud to say, and I can confidently say, that he'll serve you very, very well. If you live in the state of Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, you are covered by Russ Vorhis. All you have to do is reach out to him. You can call either the phone numbers for his two East Coast of Florida brick and mortar stores at Jacksonville Beach or Orange Park. Will give you Orange Park tonight because this is the number I called last week, 904-276-9535. As y'all know out there, I got into a car wreck a couple of weeks ago. My car was totaled. So that's its own mess with the insurance company. I wanted to start fresh and clean with a new policy from a different carrier. As I was going through a week of all the phone calls, I realized, yeah, I got to try somebody different. Oh, wait, I know State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. I already have my policy for my abode here, the penthouse suite. So why don't I see what kind of rates they have? So I called. I spoke to Ian, one of his assistants, and it was as easy as 1 hour. I had a quote. I was signed. I was ready to go. My new lease is in-house, and I can legally drive it on the roads because I'm covered. These are the things that he can do for you. They will also advise you whether you could get a better rate somewhere else. So they're outstanding at State Farm with State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. Go to russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com today for our great sponsor and a great Nole in Russ Vorhis. All right, Matt, last question for you is related to leadership on the team. We all know McCray has the ball in his hands and has played a lot of basketball, so he's one of those guys. But just in watching practices, because you've been watching them for a while, who's Florida State going to lean on in this moment? Because this is some serious adversity they faced last week, and now this week scheduled with Georgia and Houston. My God, they're going to be tested to the hilt. Yeah. So who are the leaders in that room or on that court?
So you hope Kobe because he's the most vocal. The problem with Rob, and Rob is a leader. The problem with Rob is that he's a quiet guy. That's in general the way he is. So it's kind of, you want someone who can be more vocal. I think Alex Steen has actually done a good job of stepping up there. He's been a lot more vocal in practice recently at literally everything. Like something Coach Lauk says, he'll refute it and complain about something. Like literally everything he's been talking now. So I think looking there. And then I think your most experience is Chauncey. You need that some too, because he's the only guy who has true recent Power 4 experience there. So I think that's going to be a pretty – and, he just came off of he had a tough time in the tournament. Like he was a big reason why Clemson lost to McNeese State back in March. So he knows how to deal with this, and he has dealt with this. So I think that's one you need as well. But in general, to be vocal, I like Kobe because Kobe's got that confidence. Even when he misses, he always calls himself a 100% shooter. Like that's his thing. And no matter what. And then, I like Alex Steen there too.
You going to be covering the game tomorrow night?
Probably. I'm sure I'll be there. Whether I'm covering it or not, I'm sure I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there as
9
well.
9 p.m. tip kind of sucks, though.
I'm taking a pregame nap. They're 100%. I don't like to stay up past 10 on a weeknight, but I will for Florida State, Georgia basketball at the TLC CCC. We'll have full coverage for you at warchant.com. Check out Warchant TV late night or early morning for press conferences. And I will direct everybody once again, Warchant Press Room, when we have multiple sports going on, is a great place to look for FSU soccer press conferences, FSU basketball press conferences. When our attention is split amongst many sports, add Warchant Press Room on YouTube to your subscriptions because it'll bring you more Florida State content to your home screen on your app or when you go to youtube.com. All right, Matt, thanks for the insights, man. I very much appreciate it.
Yep, thank you for having me on.
You got it. All right. In 15 seconds, the interview today between our own Ira Schofel and Jeff Cameron from today's Jeff Cameron Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just 15 seconds right here on Warchant TV.
Love to do.
Contact Russ Boris for an auto quote today.
Love to do. We bring in our friend Ira Schofel, Warchant.com on a Monday. How are you, brother? Relieved that this nightmare is over for another year?
Hallelujah, buddy. Hallelujah. That was the only feeling I had after watching that kid run for 3,000 yards Friday night. That, at least we don't have to see another game this season.
Nope, no more games this year. And then I was, wrought with fear that they were going to invite us to one of these bowls that 5 and 7 teams go to. And I thought, no, we don't want it. Nobody wants it. The players don't want it. The coaches don't want it. The university doesn't want it. And the fans sure as hell don't want to have to see this team again. So luckily we avoided it. You've got 2 different pieces up on warchant.com, of course, and we do begin the process. No matter how disgruntled and angry one might be, I know people will pay attention to the roster and to the coaches and to whatever changes are going to occur this week. I would encourage people to read Your Meetings Begin Today as FSU looks to pick up pieces from another ugly season. I feel like you wrote something similar just a year ago after going 2-10. And then also the transfer tracker that you posted, how FSU's 23 transfers performed this season, eligibility remaining. So people can get a look and get a sense of who's got eligibility left, who would you want back, who's likely to move on. I guess you want to start there, or would you like to first assess, as you just referred to it, that bludgeoning down in Gainesville? Anything surprise you about that?
Yeah, I don't think anything surprised me. It was disappointing, and that was really the thing, the week before when they lost to NC State. I just felt like they really didn't compete. I thought that was a pretty poor performance at NC State. It wasn't that NC State was great. You just didn't really compete. And with the announcement that Mike Norvell is definitely coming back, and then another week you're getting, you're playing another bad football team. You just would like to see them, just really compete and play well. And I thought some guys offensively did for sure, maybe a couple guys defensively, but for the most part, you look like you didn't want to be there. And so now you ended the season with, multiple games like that. And so again, when you lost at, Virginia, or when you lost some of these other games, it's just like, okay, well, this team's just not good enough to not play well. But I just didn't think they even showed up defensively in that game Saturday, certainly after the 4th and 1 attempt. And so, that's just disappointing. But as far as, where they go, I mean, it's just all my focus now goes to, okay, What are you going to do in the front office? What are you going to do at quarterback? What are you going to do on the offensive line? I do think there are some pieces that if you can retain them, there's some nice pieces on this team. It's not like last year where I felt like you were completely starting over, but now we have to see that process, and I don't know how quickly that process is going to be. You do have signing day this week, so their focus is going to be on finishing this class. I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of changes on the football staff this week. Usually you don't do that right before signing day. So it might be a little longer before we hear on that. And then I don't know that the general manager position is going to be filled instantaneously. So, again, it's kind of a waiting mode to see what the next steps are.
Ira, one of the things that played out on Saturday was something that you and I talked about. We talked about it both on this show. We've talked about it on headlines. And I think it's particularly frightening for Florida State fans because, again, we can have the debate about, when they should have fired him and why they should have already moved on and whether or not you think the moves in the front office are going to make a difference or not. That's for everybody to debate, and we've had that discussion. But one of the things that you brought up, and I think is happening, and we're witnessing it happen pretty consistently now, is something that is awfully hard to overcome, and that is that Mike Norvell is not reaching these kids. They don't listen to him. This is not a connected program. That he is a broken coach. He looks broken. He sounds broken. The reaction of the players after he gets a stay of execution is to go out and give that effort against Florida. I mean, all the evidence you need to say that this guy has lost this team is before you. And what do you do to offset that? How do you get that back? Is it even possible?
Yeah, no, that is my biggest concern. And that really was my biggest concern after the NC State game. What I wondered about was, okay, if he wins, if they did tell him he's coming back, maybe that gives him, just kind of the boost in the spirit to, kind of reclaim some of that, which we saw from him earlier in his career. But, clearly it did materialize. And that is my biggest concern. And, I would say this, I don't know that it's something that can come from him. I think if I was, and I think we talked about this last week. I mean, I do think Mike Norvell, if he's going to stay, he needs to, and continue with his career, I think he really needs to get somebody on his staff to help him with the messaging part, because I just don't think whatever he's saying, and I know it's probably the same stuff he's been saying for years, and last week we asked him about it, and he said he changes it up based on the team and what the team needs. Well, whatever it is not working. And so he needs somebody to help him with that. I mean, businesses hire consultants all the time. Bring somebody in to help you with that side of the operation. But in terms of getting the players to really believe, and to me, that's just to get to a reset. But to get the players to buy in and believe, I think that's going to come from the roster. And that's how it works sometimes, man. Like, players believe in certain players, and when those players are playing well, and when they're just on your roster, it makes everybody else play well. So I don't know that there's a magic way for them to believe in Mike Norvell, but if Deuce Robinson were to come back, and if you've got a decent quarterback, and if you can retain, Deuce Robinson and Mekhi Danzy and Lane McCoy, and you've got some nice, and Usman Kroma, and you've got some nice weapons, and you can, build an offense, then it's a matter of can they believe in those guys? And then Mike Norvell just kind of has to ride that until he kind of rebuilds himself a little bit. So to me, that's the only recipe. I don't think there's anything Mike Norvell can do or say to get that buy-in, but I do think he needs to work on himself too.
Do you believe the coordinators will be back, or will they move on? Will that be of their own volition, or would they dare fire these guys 1 year into their run?
Yeah, I mean, I think my impression just seems to be everything seems to be pointing to Gus leaving on his own. I don't know what that means. He talked about retiring when he was at UCF. I don't get the impression he loved this situation, being the offensive coordinator and not being the head coach anymore. So, I mean, he could stay. I don't think they would fire him, but it seems to me there just seems to be a lot of indications that he might be trying to leave. Tony White, I don't, again, I when you look at the whole season, I think he did some good things. But, man, that Pitt game is one that just always stuck in my craw. And then Saturday was just ridiculous. Now, maybe it's out of his hands. Maybe the players are they were done because of the way the last few weeks had gone, and they cashed it in. And that's not really, I don't know if he could have fixed that, but it's not a good sign, man, when you're the defensive coordinator and your defensive players across the board pretty much let you know that they're making business decisions and they don't want to tackle that back. And so he's got to live with that. He's got to figure that part out. But I do think it's possible that was more a reflection on the head coach than it was on Tony White. So if he wants to stay, I think you ride with Tony White.
Yeah, I think Florida State's probably hoping that one of those guys decides to take it on down the road so they don't have to pay him. It would be interesting to see who you could even get given the unstable situation in Tallahassee. Of the players that you listed for your article, the Transfer Tracker, obviously you mentioned Deuce Robinson and you mentioned a few other guys. By the way, I would throw in that mix a guy like Randy Pittman, right? Doesn't he have another year of eligibility?
Yep, he does.
I would throw him in there. There aren't that many guys that you would want back. Obviously, some of the younger players that you like a lot, you do. But what's your sense of what's going to happen at quarterback? Because that's where everybody's head's going to go. My opinion is that there's no way in hell I would have Tommy Castellanos back. I didn't like it to begin with. I hated it. It didn't work. What do we know about his situation? Is he going to get that appeal approved by the NCAA? Do we know? And if he did, would Florida State want him back, or would he even want to come back?
Yeah, it sounds like he wants to come back. I don't think he's going to get it. I mean, just talking to people in compliance at other schools, people that I know in that industry, as wide open as the NCAA had been for a few years there, granting everything, where you got kids in the 9th year playing college football, they've really started to shut down that down, and they've actually won some court cases over the last year or two. And so the feeling from people I've talked to is he probably is not going to get that year, even though I would argue he should get it. He's probably not going to get that year back. But even if he does, I'm with you, man. I just don't think you can do that. You can't, to me, first of all, what he made this year from in terms of NIL and revenue sharing, like you couldn't guarantee him anything close to that again. You've got to go get a better quarterback. And so I just don't see a scenario where he comes back. I hope he gets a year and plays somewhere else. The biggest, the issue for me is, and this is why I asked Mike Norvell about this 4 or 5 weeks ago when it was clear they were not going to get to the ACC championship game and do any of the big goals they had, was, about the idea of playing Kevin Sperry some in this last 4 or 5, 6 games, because you need to know what you have. If you really believe you're going to be here in 2026, which I don't know if he believed at the time, but he is going to be here, it would be nice to know what Kevin Sperry could do other than a emergency situation when you're down on the road. And so, I wish they would have played him more. Maybe he could play. He might be a guy. He might be the guy that can play, but we don't know that, and there's no way you can rest on that. So they're going to have to go get another quarterback. Now, they did bring in a transfer last year, your guy from
ETSU, buddy.
Jalen King, who they brought in last offseason. So he's a guy that he's a big, strong kid, could certainly play this kind of offense. But, it's just, again, are you going to rely on somebody that's unproven, or can you go out and get somebody that is proven? And that's going to be the task.
I've never been able to figure out this year, Ira, and I don't think you have, none of us have. And I know you've asked the question and other people have asked the question. I don't understand what the hell they were trying to do with their substitutions at running back week to week, game to game. I don't get it. And just like I don't get not playing Sperry once your season was a wash. I mean, it seems like the failures of this program and the head coach carry over into the simplest of things. Like, that's common sense, right? Why would you not have played that kid some? And why do they continue to go to running backs that they're never going to play again when you went out and paid all of that money for Croma?
No, you're right. That's my biggest. I was not leading the charge about the running back situation, but no, you're right. Those younger guys are the ones that, especially Croma, are the ones that need those at-bats. And honestly, I was thinking about it in the game Saturday, and they should have been thinking about it earlier. Again, once your goals were gone, and then, you went for all these one-year transfers on the offensive line, why would you not be playing Andre Otto,
right?
Simmons, Sandman Thompson, some of those guys that you think you're going to need to build around next season? Why not get them those reps in games as well? I mean, did we need to see another 70 reps from Micah Pettis or whoever? I mean, give some of these other guys a chance. That was weird to me. It was like they were coaching. Now, I get it. They're trying to get bowl eligible, so they felt like there was still something on the line. But you could find a way, a series here or there. It's not like those guys were playing so incredibly well. So that, to me, that was a disappointment over the last month. Is if you were going to come back next year, you could have done some things to at least kind of answer some own questions for yourself before you go in the market and the portal.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
All right, there it is, everybody. That was the interview with Jeff and Ira from today's show. Remember, Cyber Monday savings available to you right now. Head over to warchant.com for an excellent deal. It's on the screen for you if you're watching. If you're on the podcast, I'm going to tell you all about it. 50% off access to warchant.com. 50% off here on Cyber Monday. Not only do you get half-price access to Warchant, the On3 network rivals, all that comes with it, access to other message boards and websites, insights, fan dialogue back and forth. You're also going to get a $25 gift code to Garnet and Gold. Outstanding. That's something we're doing above and beyond for you here at warchant.com. The network from On3 is giving you 50% off. That's wonderful. We said, so we're not stopping there. Don't stop there. Let's do extra. $25 to Garnet and Gold on top of it all. Head over to warchant.com to sign up right now. And now here he is, the senior recruiting analyst for warchant.com. His name is Michael Langston. Michael, all right, man, we've sat together on these video waves many years ahead of a signing day. A lot of times we're sharing the screen for not so good news.
Yeah.
For right now, as bad as things are on the football field, it looks like they're going to hold this thing together, Michael. 27 kids committed to Florida State. They're 14th in the country in terms of recruiting rankings. Do you think that there are going to be any fireworks between now and Wednesday, or do you think that the kids that are on the commit list right now are going to hold?
I think right now most, if not all, would hold based on what you've seen and what I've heard in checking the different guys. I think I said it last week when we did our video. You know, if they announce and make a decision, that he's returning, I think most of them will be solidified where the guy's leading it. Obviously, they can change anytime they want if there's some kind of altercation or altering of way they go, where we know there's going to be some changes. So what those changes do impact guys, maybe that later will be something that we look into and address. But overall, I think most of them, I think we expect that they will sign. Obviously, me and Matt are both tracking down the times and when the ceremonies are for Wednesday. But I think a majority of these guys, I don't think there's anybody in there that I'm like, oh, this guy might not sign. We aren't hearing anything like this guy might not sign with FSU. I think most of them have indicated to us that they're going to sign. The two guys they lost, Sean Johnson, DB, out of the DMV area, ended up at Maryland, flipped to Maryland. And then Duron Parks is another one, offensive lineman, 3-star offensive lineman. He's likely going to North Carolina. I don't think either one of those recruitments were an effect of Norvell coming back. I think it's just a more comfortable situation for both of those kids. It wasn't like, oh, you guys are terrible, I'm just going to go somewhere else. I think it just had to be a situation where they did that. I think most of the kids still believe in what Norvell's doing, and it's going to be interesting as far as these changes, and I have an article coming up. I just worked on it today that will discuss the 2 or 3 things that I think needs to be accomplished for FSU in the next whoever you hire, whoever you don't keep, whoever you retain, whoever you don't retain, what they need to do in recruiting that is very much lacking, and to be honest, it's a lot. So there you go.
It feels like it's a lot.
It is.
It really does. Let's see. If you got questions for Michael, feel free right now in the chat to file those. We've got a good little bit with Michael here. I'm going to start with some comments.
Okay.
Wesley Villages says, yo, Michael, talk about the linebacker, Williams. So many thought he would flip yet again. Yeah. Is this, Matt said it earlier, he'll believe it when he sees it, but he thinks it's going to be quiet. Where do you stand on Isaiah Williams, who has been committed to just about every institution in this country before signing day?
Yeah, I think it's a situation too where once Isaiah made that last commitment, you're kind of like, okay, when's the next one going to be? Because what's going on. But he never took any visits anywhere. He never gave an indication that he would go anywhere else. I do think he'll sign with FSU. I think it got to that point where he really wanted to show like, hey, I'm not some kid that just flips 100 times. Those reasoning behind every move he made. And I think he was always really comfortable with FSU, and I think he sees a situation there where he can make an early impact as a player at FSU. He didn't play, I think, majority or if not all his season at Tavares High School. So I think he knows he has certainly a strong opportunity to go in there, get on the field, and linebacker's been a really sore spot for me when I watch FSU play. Just pretty awful, to be honest. But that's a place where I feel like he thinks he can come in there and contribute. all indications I have is that I do expect him to sign, but I can understand people like Matt and everyone else to be kind of wary because you've committed to 3 different schools or whatever it was. But I think he's a guy that's been he hasn't given any red flag that you worries you or concerns you. I mean, he hasn't even remotely even considered. I mean, he's visited more than even any other commit that's come. When he committed back to FSU, he's there almost every home game. So I definitely, outside of the world falling apart, I think that's probably one I feel good about.
He seems like, Michael, of a lot of these kids, a potential day one contributor because there is the access to the field.
Yeah.
But then also, so in Rivals industry, he's the 5th rated linebacker overall. In Rivals own rankings, he's the number 1 linebacker in the country. I mean, so in any year for Florida State, good, bad, or wherever the hell we are right now, it's the number 1 linebacker in the country. Like, that's a big damn deal, sir.
It is, and I think he wanted to illustrate, like, look, I'm not some head case that. I mean, he wanted to show that, hey, I'm behind this, even with all their struggles. And certainly, I think every FSU fan would be warranted if he looked around and he went to visit other places, but he never did that. I think he wanted to show, like, okay, I'm serious this time. This is where I want to be. He didn't do what he was doing before. Even when he committed to Ole Miss, he was still taking visits to other places. And when he committed to FSU the first time, he was taking visits to other places. And in Florida, same thing. When he got to Florida State that last time, he really illustrated maturity of what you were looking for from a guy that's committed. So he did that, and now he just has to put pen to paper. But I think everything points to that happening.
Another question here. This is from, well, actually, it's a command. But Florida Man Alabama says, break out the crystal ball, Michael. All right. I'm going to do this then. Thank you, Florida Man Alabama, for being a member of the channel. The proverbial, the annual mystery recruit. Do we have any of those this cycle, Michael? Michael, that rhymes. Do we have any of those this cycle, or are we looking at something that's pretty quiet here Wednesday through Friday?
I mean, I'm going to say you never know. Even last year when they got Shamar Arnott's, people kind of didn't. They're in the picture. There's guys they're talking to. But I think there's guys that you could see pop up there. I don't think it's going to be as strong as it was last year, where Usman flips and we didn't. I think I kind of indicated that I felt like that's not over and they're trying. But I see even then, I don't think a lot of people thought that you would get that done. But I don't think I don't think the quantity or quality will be quantity of the flips will be as many. But you could have 1 or 2 that are new additions in there. I don't think it'll like stun people or anything, but I think there's always a few that you could get. I wouldn't even call them mystery recruits. I just call them like guys that they've probably been in contact with, especially them losing Sean Johnson. You could see them go after another DB to fill that spot. And then, maybe other places where they get an offensive tackle, maybe the Thomas kid that's a legacy that committed to Minnesota. That might be one that you keep an eye on, but I don't think it's going to be something major where some 5-star flips from Missouri to FSU or something to that thing. I think it's just going to be somebody that they kept in tune with on the radar, and then maybe they get them on early signing.
We've got a question about what you would grade this class overall. I'm going to let you think on that while I tell everybody about the greatness that is Whataburger. Hey, everybody. When first unwrapping your Whataburger, you may find yourself awestruck by what's in front of you, a hot, fresh, and made-to-order 5-inch toasted bun filled with a 100% never frozen American beef patty grilled to perfection with melty cheese, crisp, hand-chopped veggies, and mustard. It may look more like art than food. Some even consider it a masterpiece, and they aren't wrong. Whataburger, just like you like it. Thank you to Whataburger for secondary sponsorship of tonight's program, the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. There you go. Not an easy script to execute, but we did it. Brandon says, what do y'all grade the current recruiting class as it is now? You grade on a curve because of the 5 and 7, Michael, or are you just giving straight up against Florida State standards? This is what this class is. What do you think?
I'm just straight up always. So that's just me. I'm going to give it a C+, personally. That might sound kind of low and mean, but I'm just like the offensive line. You didn't get any top tier guys. You got some guys that maybe pan out that work, like Luke Francis and Jacoby Green, who I both love those guys. That they're good talents, and there's some other ones in there, but you don't have one that just blows your socks off. So that's one that's a takeaway there. You got some edge guys, so I'm giving you credit for that, which is a C plus. You got edge guys, you got a quarterback. You flipped Amari Thomas back to FSU because you need another running back to go in this class. And then the other positions, they got guys that are good. I mean, you got 2 elite guys in Chuck Kennan and certainly Isaiah Williams that are all elite guys. I like what you did with Rankins at the defensive line position. Wide receiver, you did pretty good. Brandon Bennett, Devin Carter, a lot of Jason Lopez, all those guys are really solid. So that's C plus. I think it's as fair as I can be with. There's just too much in there where we're not seeing top tier guys that like from a balance standpoint. Like Rankins is really good. Tight end Isaiah Tiller's really good. But back to the Rankins thing, who else do you have outside of Rankins? Well, there's 3 stars in there, and you kind of want a 4-star to match with him for that class. And offensive line, like I said, you want some 4-star or top talent in there that you don't see in there. So you have to be fair, and I'd say C plus or B minus if you're curving it.
Noel Kev asks, he says, hey, T. Lang and Mike, my question is, how much does FSU's national perception affect recruiting? I know money is big these days, but all the top players are getting paid. Where do big games and conferences matter? Thanks, guys. And thank you, Noel Kev, for the contribution. What do you think, Michael?
Oh, it always matters what conference you play in. We see that with even schools that haven't been good in the SEC. They find a way to get these guys to go play in the SEC. I think same thing with the Big Ten. There's some teams that probably don't do as much, but they still get guys. You get in the ACC, it's just basically if you don't have ties to like your locations that are strongest for you, whether it's Florida, Georgia, or other places, you really start to hurt. And you see that with teams that don't have those ties in there. Miami did really well. Florida did really well. Even when Napier there with all their struggles, they knew they were going to fire him. Even all that stuff, they still recruited well. Now, Florida's kind of got the SEC thing going with them, but Miami doesn't. And Miami does the same thing Miami does every year, and they lose to teams they shouldn't lose to with a loaded roster, and they never go play for an ACC title. But they have a belief inside that program of what they do with players, whether it's developing, and they believe in Mario, what he's doing, because he can recruit elite ways. He has great connections to the state of Florida. He has great connections to different areas, and Mike just doesn't have that. So FSU has to win on merit of what they do on the field, and that's part of kind of what my article will be about. It's kind of a good segue of they have to do something that attracts kids. I think Ira touched on it really well, as long as Jeff Cameron, when they had that little segment that, these kids aren't listening. So you have to get something with the messaging being received. And that goes with both recruiting, because you're getting these top kids that come here, but overall, top 14 sounds okay. It's good. But for FSU standards, it's not. You should get a top 10 class every year, in my opinion. If it's FSU, you should always get a top 10 class, in my opinion. If you're a good coach, there's no way you shouldn't get a top 10 class at a school like FSU. He doesn't have any. So he has to figure out, if you're doing make a GM change, you have to find out what's working. And I think also, FSU needs to be more aggressive and more of a jerk on the trail. Like, hey, stop kissing butt and say, this is what we offer. This is why FSU's the standard or a high standard, and start illustrating what your standard is and start showing it. I think overall that's the stuff that they're lacking. Obviously, you're retaining Mike Norvell, so that means you should have more money to spend as far as NIL and really go after these guys aggressively. And I think the problem I see is they go after aggressively in the portal, but not so much except for 1 or 2 guys when it comes to high school. So I think that has to change in their method and how they aggressively do their recruiting with their GM role or whatever assistants or coordinators are here. That's what needs to be the plan.
I'm curious. This is a personal question.
Okay.
Michael, they did a very good job this class. In the receiver realm and tight end. That's strange to you, because this offense isn't necessarily built around the receivers. I thought the receivers were actually pretty good this year too, but you didn't have an offense that was built to display just how good they were. LeWayne McCoy was in and out in terms of health, so was Boggs. But Danzy was a revelation, and Deuce obviously was a week-to-week stud. Like, they haven't been that loaded at 4 deep at receiver. in some time. And yet, it's not like this was an offense where they got off the bus and go, oh God, we're worried about those wide receivers.
Yeah.
How did they pull it off with the receivers and the tight ends? It just doesn't feel like a natural fit. And like legitimately, it looks like they did a good job at those two places.
Yeah, we're critical of the staff a lot of times of different things than what we see on the product. But overall, if you look at what Chris Thompson's done as far as recruiting, Landon Thomas, Chase Lofton the year before that, he was a 4-star tight end that I really love. Chase got hurt during the year, and now you have Xavier Tiller, who's in that same mold, which also a really good blocker. I think it speaks to their recruiting. I think Chris is doing a really good job recruiting. I think Tim Harris Jr. has done a phenomenal job recruiting. I think it speaks to your recruiting because, to your point, we weren't thinking we were coming this year like, oh yeah, FSU's going to really hum that ball around and throw it around. We're thinking, okay, they got Gus Malzahn. He's going to run the ball. That's what his history is. That's what he does. They're going to pound the ball. They're going to pound the rock. And they did that early in the season. Then later as it went on, we saw a lot more passing. We saw a development when Micah Denzi is a lot more pure receiver than we've ever seen with Micah Denzi. He was not doing this stuff that he's doing this year. Certainly got better. He's certainly better at just his body control with the balls in the air. He's better at catching the ball. That touchdown he had against Florida, that's one of the best I've seen him do. Carrying 3 guys in the end zone for the score. It's a great play. So you've had development, I think, with that position. So those are 2 guys, I've been fairly pleased with as far as just different receivers of what they've done with them. But overall, the product hasn't been good as far as what they do, but I think overall, I think they have a lot to be excited about in that wide receiver room. You got Brandon Bennett, Jason Lopez, who I'm pretty high at in the slot. I think he does a really good job. Darion Williams is another good playmaker, and then certainly you have the guys like Devin Carter and others that are just it's a solid class. It's a good solid class, and that's why if they really nailed that position really well. But it's that other positions that didn't equal that balance, like offensive line and defensive line, where you needed more 4 stars in there that you felt like are going to come right in there and play because, what the Desir twins are doing is amazing, but you can't count on the 3-star prospect being projected and developed in college if you're being real for that many. I think they have over like 15 3-stars. So you have to – it can happen, but it's more likely and feasible that a 4-star is going to project better than one that's just a 3-star.
Blue chips that say yes are always good. I'm not trying to turn them away, but that's the thing that confuses me here. You're hitting on this, Michael, because this offense looks like it needs to be built. Let's assume that you're going to run something similar, even if Gus is the OC or not. It needs to be built on the trenches. Running back probably needs to feature more of the tight end. I think Tommy's height had something to do with the fact that he didn't go over the middle a whole lot. But not receivers. It feels like that would be like one of the last things in the pecking order. Again, you're not going to say, hey, Tim, stand down. You're doing too good of a job. We can't take all these receivers. But it just feels like the recruiting is not matching the scheme. Is that fair to say?
I think it's very fair, Tom. Absolutely. You look at the emergence of Wayne McCoy, who's been phenomenal the last 3 weeks. I think I already talked about Dancy, who's really took a big step in his game of something we didn't see at Dancy at all. They wouldn't even played him that much. Even when we saw him out there and he was doing what he did against Alabama, I think we were all in shock because it was such a high development of what he had done before. And then I think with Deuce, we knew he was good, but he's a lot better than what we thought. But he's not a finished product. Deuce has a lot of things he can still fix and get better. So he got better as the season goes on. So Tim's done a really good job. I think even Chris Thompson's done a really good job of developing their positions. It definitely doesn't match the scheme and stuff of what we're seeing product on the field. And then I think Ira touched on it. They're got to get a whole new offensive line, it feels like, because, all those guys. So you have to figure out the right fits. And I go back to the most important thing is the quarterback position. And you definitely have to have a guy. That's the key to everything as far as your offensive side of the ball. Whether Gus is there or not, you have to figure that out, who's going to be the guy. I would probably side with Ira as well, that I would want something different because there's too much erratic play that messes up stuff, passing the ball with Tommy, unfortunately. And that's Tommy is exactly what we thought he was. Like, he can make big plays, but he can also miss plays that most quarterbacks won't. But he gave them a different aspect with his running. And it's the best they could probably do at that point. But now you're getting to the development part of what that team actually needs. And so now they have to. I think the quarterback position is the most important thing for FSU to execute in this offseason.
Yeah, one thing. Yes. Also, Gus was exactly what we thought he would be and said he would be, which is
Yeah.
he'll score you a result where you go, "Holy crap! How did you do that, Gus?" And then you'll lose games where you go, "Holy crap! How did you get out there, Gus?" I mean, it's exactly what their track record was before they came in here. They lived up to it. Let's see. Jeff, with one of the final questions of the night, says, "Is Xavier Tiller solid? If Florida State would throw to the tight ends, he seems like a matchup problem." Yeah, Michael, I love this get if he signs. Do you think he's solid?
I think he's going to sign. I think people were worried about it. I think I think Chad Simmons went to his first playoff game last weekend, and he told Chad, like, I'm locked solid, I'm locked in. I think this goes to one of those recruitments of both Chris Thompson and Mike Norvell. If those guys are both returning, I think it's very comfortable. They get that. They're still working on Hezzy Kent. They just got a new coach. Trust me, I know my Florida friends. I have Florida friends, believe it or not. They're not happy. So I understand there's a uncertainty with that Hezzy Kent, you're still, possibly could, if you're looking for magic, people ask the mystery recruits. That's one guy that I'm keep an eye on to see what he does. But I think certainly with Xavier, I think as long as Norvell and Thompson are there, I think, it's hard for me to see him not going there. But to your point, yes, they need somebody that they can throw the tight end, but at the same time, you have to scheme it right, and the quarterback has to get the guy the ball in the right situations. And it's almost when you watch Deuce, they use him in a lot of just tight end set type of plays, that they do. Either they can't scheme it right to run it for the tight end, or they just don't want to do it. But I think a tight end could certainly be impactful in this offense. We've seen that with Randy Pittman, the way they use him, whether it's wildcat or little pitches or swing the gate type of plays. And so I think recruits see what they can do, but I think they need somebody that's why I always highlighted that quarterback position, because I think that would really certainly up that offense, no matter if it's Gus or somebody else, that you could really do a lot of different things with that.
So is it fair to say that in the entire time he's been here, so the staff that has been with Mike all 6 years, is Chris Thompson his best recruiter?
He's one of the top ones when you go by history. If you go by history of the guys he's landed, I think certainly through his time, Surtain's been really good. If you look at the type of guys that he landed in this class, where it's last year, maybe not so much as this year, although he did get Chuck Kennan, another elite guy. So it seems like Surtain and Thompson always get elite guys, at least one every year, and they're ones that have been doing the best. And there's certain areas that rest on the team that aren't as good, pretty clearly. And I don't think people have to need be to say the words of, they could figure it out and research it themselves of what they've gotten, the last few years at some of those positions. But I think overall, those guys have done a good job as far as recruiting.
You've got an Unafraid article coming out on Warchant.com this week saying what Florida State needs to get friggin' right this next cycle. Look for that, everybody. Sign up. Again, it's 50% off plus a $25 gift code to Garnet Gold. What else can folks expect, Michael, as Florida State goes through the early signing period? The press conference is now Friday at noon for Mike Norvell. Okay. But what's your week going to be like covering this particular signing class?
Well, that's news to me. I didn't know about the press conference, so that's good to know. Friday at noon, I'll be there. But I think overall we'll have a lot of signing day coverage. If something happens where it's new or surprise, we'll keep you guys abreast. We'll make sure that you guys know when all these guys are signing, the time they're doing it, and if anything develops, we'll certainly have the latest on this recruiting class, and then we'll get ramped up for what really matters. I think with FSU fans is the portal. You got the new portal, one portal window coming up. I think it's in January, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be a major thing for FSU of what this team can be orchestrated like. I mean, I got family that's calling me up, Tom, asking me, what's this team going to look like next year? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know who's going to be there coach-wise, and I don't know what players are going to be there. So, and we don't know what players are going to get. So there's a lot to still figure out. We'll be there with all these changes, whatever changes they are. I'm going to address that as far as I'll probably have some articles on that coming up of whenever those changes do occur. I agree with Ira, probably not until after this early signing day, but whatever that means for FSU going forward. And it's a good time to be at Warchant, guys, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to have to address and get into deep involved as far as what can they do to, I guess, keep this train moving.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mess, everybody. We don't sugarcoat here. It's a mess in all facets for Florida State. But this next month is going to be extremely interesting, really the next 6 to 8 weeks, because it's not just about when you enter your name in the portal. You do that over that period, January, 2 to 15, somewhere in there, first couple of weeks of January. You got to also, have those quick visits on campus. You got to get integrated. You have early enrollee, newcomer interviews. It's all happening at warchant.com. All the coverage, retention of current players, departures of current players, retention of current coaches, departures of current coaches, early signing day, new coaches that might be coming in, front office personnel. I mean, it feels like a Billy Joel song where you go bop, 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 and you go over and over and over.
Yeah.
There's like 90 things that are going to be happening over the next month. Join us at warchant.com, the land of Michael Langston, the premium recruiting board, the tribal council, the largest FSU fan community in the business. It's all there. Head over to Warchant. And as always, subscribe to this channel. It's free, and you will have Florida State content on your home screen. For Matt Lasser, who joined us earlier in the program, for Irish Novel Jeff Cameron, who recorded earlier today, but we played that interview. For director Nick Carlisle behind the scenes, did a wonderful job. For Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst, my name's Tom. Thanks to State Farm agent Russ Voorhis for sponsoring tonight's program. Stay tuned to warchant.com. Wake up Warchant in the morning, Seminole headlines, 1 o'clock. A lot coming your way. And again, Wednesday, wall-to-wall coverage of the early signing period. Thanks, everybody, for participating in the chat, and we will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.